My name is George Abu from the Museum of Archaeology and Anthropology, University of Cambridge. The title of my presentation is Christian and Igbo Religious Systems, the New Interface. Watch this. This is Amabe in Nsukka, Enugu State of southeastern Nigeria, a spirit being that I would like to call masquerade because that is the most common name. Omaba performs in villages and on the streets of urban centers in Nsukka, pursuing and whipping young men and women. A couple of weeks ago, the Omabe Society did Imejo Kachi, a ceremony marking the appearance of the masquerade in the visible world, where it would perform for a number of months, disappear for some months to reappear later in the year. On that day, the masquerades were seen on the streets in large number. They were accompanied by men playing musical instruments, singing and dancing. Watching the crowd of spirit beings performing with human beings, an onlooker said in Nsukka language, "Ekoranda ha, soma tikiye ha, bosho kan ha be yahu no loka, agegu ekpe ekpere anati oriri." The translation is, you see these people performing with masquerades. On Sunday, you will see the same people in church, singing, praying, receiving Holy Communion. That comment speaks to the current form of interrelationship between Christian faith and the local religious system in parts of Igbo land. This new trend is setting in at a time we are rather used to the destruction of Igbo cultural heritage in the name of Christianity. Ogwai, Agu, and Ugu write that in the 2000s, people from different villages in the Nsukka area relinquished to the Okunere Adoration Ministry their cultural heritage objects with the conviction that they hindered their economic prosperity. That iconoclastic attitude is giving way to a new form of interest in Igbo religion, not in a way that undermines the Christian faith, which has been its chief bane, but that brings the two closer to interface with each other. The decline of Igbo religious system began in the first place with Christianization and colonialism. Lots of Igbo cultural objects were branded fetish and idols, which according to the Christian faith must not be worshipped, yet they were taken away to the West through the colonial ship. Way into the post-colonial time, it would be good to consider how the colonial archive figures in understanding that resurgence of interest in Igbo religion and its new relation to Christianity. I draw on the response of local audiences to the photographs and pictures of artifacts from the UK-based N.W. Thomas archive during our re-entanglement field work. It will be important to use the contemporary engagement with colonial archives to understand how the religious landscape first altered by colonialism is changing again. Just to give you background information about the re-entanglement project. Between 1909 and 1915, anthropologist N.W. Thomas was hired by the British colonial government to conduct anthropological surveys in southern Nigeria and Sierra Leone. His work produced huge collections of photographs, artifacts, audio recordings, botanical specimens, and field notes. And these have been housed in cultural institutions in the UK, the Museum of Archaeology and Anthropology, University of Cambridge, Royal Anthropological Institute, London, Pitt Rivers Museum in Oxford, British Library, UK National Archives, among others. The Re-Entanglements project, funded by Arts and Humanities Research Council, England, and led by Paul Basu, Professor of Anthropology at SOAS, University of London, re-engages the Thomas collections. It seeks to better understand the historical context in which these materials were gathered and what they mean for different communities today, what actions they make possible, how we might creatively explore their latent possibilities, and to rethink their significance in the present. To pursue these objectives, we conducted collections-based research first in Cambridge, photographing the artifacts Thomas collected. We shared some of the photographs and our experiences on our website and social media platforms, where they have continued to generate exciting conversations and controversies. We took copies of the Thomas photographs, audio recordings, and pictures of artifacts back to Nigeria, where we put them to two different uses. First, a selection of artists, musicologists, and linguists from Nsukka and other artists from Benin City and Lagos worked with the archive from different thematic and conceptual angles. Second, we inserted the archival documents into ethnographic fieldwork that included photo elicitation, interviews, and pop-up exhibitions. As stated earlier, one of the goals of the re-entanglement projects is to see what the colonial archive affords in the present. As we share the thermal photographs in the communities where they were taken, one recurring response they elicit is their historical connection to how Christianity interfaces with the Igbo religious system. One such interface is found in the very establishment of the church in some parts of Igbo land. Some churches in the region are geographically and philosophically rooted in the foundation laid by the Igbo religious order. Consider the Mpuniyi Shrine in Nise, Anambra State as an example. N.W. Thomas photographed the Mpuniyi Shrine House in 1911 in his second tour in Nigeria. His framing allows us to see the Uliwo decoration, which was typical of the Igbo shrine architecture when the anthropologists worked in Nigeria. We did not find any account of Mpuniyi in Thomas' reports, but through our research in Nise, we got the history of the site, how it was used in Thomas' time, and how things have changed over the last 40 years. In January 2019, Obed Osinem and Peter Ostadimma Anadebe took us to Mpuniyi. We were welcomed by the sight of a broad space with a distribution of buildings, a two-story nursery and primary school block, a hall, a gigantic church house, a chapel, and other smaller structures. It was the SS Peter and Paul Catholic Church. We met Felix Mweke Echele, a church warden, Simon Okoli, the catechist, and Reverend Father Christopher Okafor, the parish priest. This small group of men shared fascinating stories which collectively began with, "This is Mpuniyi, but the shrine is no more." When the shrine was there, people came from far and wide for consultation, seeking charms for protection and material prosperity. John Ebudu, for instance, got some charm from Mpuniyi to protect him in the World War II, in which he fought as a combatant, and he did return safely from the war. Behind the fence built around the church, as shown in this photograph, is a valley descending some hundreds of feet down. In the valley, water issues forth from the rock at various points, forming the Ololu Mpuniyi stream. Water from the stream had healing power and was used at the shrine for washing, cooking, and other sacrificial activities. It was the role of a particular man, and not a woman, to fetch the water, and while performing this function, he must be unclothed, with omunku, that is palm leaf, in between his lips, and must not utter a word until he dropped the water. The pot of water must not touch bare ground, but placed on aju, usually made of the bark of banana stem. All these were meant not to jeopardize the potency of the deity. Felix Mweke, the warden of the church, was 6 years old when his father died in 1966 as the last priest of Mpuniyi. Mpuniyi formed a major part of Felix's childhood experience. He was regular at the shrine, eating chicken heads and legs and drinking palm wine given to him by his father. After the death of Felix's father, the man who was supposed to be the next priest did not take up the position due to his Christian faith, and no one else did. As the number of Christian converts rapidly increased in the community, the loss of interest in Mpuniyi Shrine continued to grow until it was completely abandoned. By 1980, majority of the members of the community had become Christians, and the move to build a village hall and a kindergarten in the Mpuniyi premises did not meet any resistance. Then, what followed in Mpuniyi illustrates that as human societies change, there is something about the original substance that remains, not any longer in the pure state, but in interaction with the received order. In 2005, the SS Peter and Paul Catholic Church was built at Mpuniyi, where the shrine was. Apart from the geographical siting of the church, it stood on the ontological foundation laid by the Mpuniyi Shrine and appropriated the powers of the deity. For instance, the Ololu Mpuniyi stream with its healing power was adopted by the church. The then Catholic Bishop of Awka Diocese blessed the stream to Christianize and make it holy. Since then, Catholics flocked to the stream to fetch the water. To get closer to the source of power, the church later set up a prayer ministry, that is Adoration Ground, as it is more commonly called, at the Ololumpuni. The Adoration Ground is a holy place down in the valley with the stream, grasses, trees, and statues drawn from Bible themes. Day and night, it is populated by adherents of Catholic Church, singing, praying, speaking in tongues, receiving anointing and healing. The early 20th century power of Ololumpuni still holds sway more than 100 years after Thomas photographed the shrine. The interface between Christian and Igbo religious systems, as illuminated by Mpuni, is articulated in Paul Basu's notion of in-betweenness. He uses a Janus-faced mask from Sierra Leone wearing a Western-style hat to examine how mediation and movement between worlds gets materialized. Colonial contact prompted the meeting of cultures that has continued to evolve in various forms. In the case of Mpuni, it is about appropriation of indigenous practices by the received system. In some other cases, and that is my second point, the local system sustains itself by operating under the smoke screen of the received culture. Anthropologist Chidugu explores this phenomenon through his work around the changing landscape of the Nigerian health system. Aware of the influence exerted by Christianity and biomedicine, indigenous healers and herbal dealers package and advertise their herbal medicine in the way pharmaceutical companies do. They also integrate healing ministry, in which case patients are admitted to Ulebere, that is prayer house or spiritual clinic if you like, where divine intervention is evoked, without which healing supposedly becomes impossible. Ethnographic fieldwork with N.W. Thomas photographs took us to Agulu, Anambra State, and then to Onu Idemili Shrine, also known as Idemili Cultural Center, that epitomizes Ugu's above-mentioned analysis. We showed the Idemili priest, a selection of the photographs Thomas took in Agulu. Pictured in one of them is the Aquarium Shrine that gives children and keeps them alive. We were shown an aquarium at Onu Idemili, and what followed was a narration of the power of Idemili. Apart from making the woman's womb fruitful, Idemili gives protection, wealth, power, and fame. Onu Idemili is located at the bank of Agulu Lake, and a vast section of the site is populated by statues overlooking the lake. While those on one side of the fenced space are drawn from Bible themes, others are anchored on Igbo religion and were beside shrine installations. After consultation with the priest, he would recommend praying before the Christian-related statues or offering traditional sacrifices among the Igbo religious figures and shrines on the other side. The recommendation is determined by the client's religious inclination. What plays out here is the indigenous system riding on the back of the received culture to sustain itself. Onu Idemili is an Igbo deity, but to widen the scope of its patronage and serve even ardent Christians in a region where Christianity has assumed a strong identity difficult to give up, its program has to have a broader spread. Clergymen seeking to expand their congregation get charms from Onu Idemili the way adherents of Igbo religion do. But what is the rationale behind this change in the religious landscape of Igbo land? It is one of the ways in which the people respond to the country's harsh living conditions of the post-independence era. It is in the nature of religion to promise succor, and in a country like Nigeria, fraught with all sorts of crises which the state has failed to resolve, you don't expect anything less than a high religious fervor. It is in this context that John Mabadelo analyzes the rise of Pentecostalism. He writes, "The expansion of the reach of Pentecostalism was facilitated by the economic and political crisis of the 1980s, which naturally and psychologically created adherents who were drawn from the pool of frustrated and marginalized people in the larger Nigerian society. Pentecostalism laid claims to power to perform all sorts of miracles, including healing and material prosperity. But over the decades, it does not seem to have delivered on that promise. So naturally, people have to continue to search for solutions to their problems. Such search has brought many Igbo people back to their religious heritage. Sharing the N.W. Thomas archival documents in different Igbo communities has exposed us to the dynamics of the search. In 1911, Thomas photographed parts of different Ngene shrines in Nibo, Anambra State. For example, this is the picture of the stone where palm wine and kola nuts were offered in one of the shrines. Paul Nwafo, popularly known as Ngene Melumeze, one of the priests of Ngene Ngendo, argued that Thomas must have taken the photograph at Ngene Ngendo. In 2019, he took us to the shrine to show us its look 108 years after Thomas' visit. This is the stone photographed in May 2019. The story of the stone stands for more than a century-old history of Ngene Ngendo that allows us to see how the livelihood of the Igbo relates to their indigenous religion. Some decades after Thomas' visit, the shrine was abandoned and it fell apart. Ngene Melumeze was then a successful businessman traveling from one continent to the other. But at some point, he experienced a downturn in his life. He lost the wealth he had made over the years. He set out to inquire into the cause of his misfortune. Behold, he learned that Ngene Ngendo had called him to serve as a priest. He came back home to Nibo, cleared the shrine that had turned into a forest, and reconstructed the various shrine houses and installations, including the stone for offering palm wine and kola nuts, which he framed with concrete blocks. Today, Ngene Ngendo is one of the largest and most famous shrines in Nibo and in fact in the Awka district. It is a destination for people seeking success in life, researchers, journalists, and more. The 2019 Ngene Ngendo Festival, which the Reentanglement team attended, gave us a sense of the many ways the deity touches lives. It was an avenue for people to pray for the desire of their heart, eat, drink, sell their wares, and display their skills for entertainment, but also in exchange for money. For many, Ngene delivers on the promise of economic transformation for its adherents, which, as I have shown, is one of the factors behind the resurgence of interest in Igbo religion, such that brings it into interaction with Christianity. As for the dynamics of that interface, I have examined how the colonial archive opens up the ways to understand the phenomenon. The religious landscape has kept changing, and it is fascinating how colonial archive, a product of the colonial project that destroyed indigenous religion in the first place, helps us make sense of the change. Thank you.